Welcome to your deep dive. We've got some seriously thought-provoking stuff to dig into today.
Oh, yeah. Definitely some heavy concepts.
Your sources lay out this potential theory of everything. We're talking philosophy, physics, even ideas about God, all kind of blended together.
You know what strikes me is how these sources connect those dots. Like,
Yeah.
they don't treat these big ideas as totally separate things.
Right. It's like weaving a tapestry.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
So let's start with something we can all grasp. I think
Okay.
your sources bring up Descartes that I think, therefore I am thing.
Oh, yeah. Classic philosophy.
But why is that such a big deal? What makes that so important?
Well, it gets at this idea of certainty. You know, even if everything else is an illusion.
Like we're in the Matrix or something.
Right, exactly. Even then, the fact that you're doubting proves there's something there to do the doubting.
So like that's the one piece of the puzzle we can be absolutely sure of.
And from that tiny piece, your research suggests we can start to build up an understanding of much bigger questions about existence.
Okay, so we've got this thinking self that we know exists for sure.
Right.
What's the next clue in this puzzle then? Where do we go from there?
Well, your sources introduce this concept of distinction.
Distinction.
Yeah, it's the idea that we perceive the world as made up of separate things.
Okay, like I'm separate from you. This microphone is separate from the table.
Exactly. It's how we categorize and make sense of things.
Makes sense, but then there's this anti-distinction idea too.
Uh-huh. Now that one's a bit harder to wrap your head around.
Yeah, it seems like the total opposite of what we were just talking about.
It is. Think of it this way. It's like trying to describe the ocean without ever mentioning waves or currents or depths.
So anti-distinction is like the whole ocean, and distinction is all the individual waves.
You got it. It's the idea that ultimately everything is connected, a unified whole.
But we just can't really see it that way.
We're kind of stuck in our world of distinctions. As observers, we can never fully grasp that ultimate oneness.
Hold on, though. If we can't even grasp this anti-distinction, how do we know it even exists?
That's where those three proofs you provided come into play.
Okay, so remind me, what were those again?
The first one highlights how whenever we try to represent reality, we automatically break it down into parts.
We can't help but categorize things.
Right, so we're always missing that fundamental oneness.
Okay, and the second proof?
Well, it points out that distinction and reality are kind of like two sides of the same coin. Always present, but never fully reconcilable.
So they're like intertwined, but also in opposition to each other.
Exactly. And then the third proof gets into the concept of size.
Right.
If reality is truly partless, with no separate pieces, how could you ever define the smallest thing or the largest thing?
I guess you couldn't.
Exactly. It suggests that size and maybe even time stretch out infinitely.
Oh.
Yeah, your mind starts to bend a little with that one.
It does. And this brings us to that infinite size time diagram from your sources. Is this where things start to get really trippy?
Maybe a little, but it's also incredibly fascinating.
So how does this diagram work?
Well, imagine all of existence laid out on a graph. You've got size on one axis.
From infinitely small to infinitely large.
Yep. And then you've got time on the other axis, stretching forever in both directions.
Past and future without end.
And your sources suggest that what we perceive as the beginning, the Big Bang,
Yeah.
it might just be one chapter in an infinite story.
So there's no actual starting point.
Not in the traditional sense. The Big Bang is just one event on a timeline that goes on forever.
Wow, so all those sci-fi ideas about parallel universes, alternate timelines, maybe they're not so crazy after all.
It definitely opens up some intriguing possibilities, right?
It does. Okay, so we've got this infinite size time diagram, and then your sources hit us with another big one, energy, mass, space-time.
Ah, yes. Now that one's a real mind bender.
Break it down for me. Is it like saying everything's connected through some cosmic energy field?
It's even more fundamental than that. Your sources connect it to Einstein's famous equation, E equals MC.
Okay, I remember that from physics class, but I'm a little rusty.
Basically, it says that energy and mass are interchangeable.
Like they're two sides of the same coin again.
Right. And your sources take it a step further, suggesting that energy and mass are also inseparable from space-time.
Space-time, that's like the fabric of the universe, right?
Exactly. So energy, mass, space-time becomes this single, unified entity.
Wow. So even a simple leaf falling from a tree has this incredible potential for energy conversion.
Precisely. Like we see in nuclear reactions.
And your sources go as far as to say that everything exists as in because of nothing.
It's a pretty bold statement, right? It suggests that even the nothingness of space-time is integral to existence.
It is bold. I'm starting to see how all these ideas fit together, though. You've got this infinite canvas of size and time,
Right.
and then this fundamental building block of energy, mass, space-time that makes up everything within it.
It's like a cosmic recipe for existence.
That's a great way to put it.
And your sources use these ideas, along with the interplay of distinction and oneness, as the foundation for a three-pillared existential theory.
3 pillars.
Yeah, it's an attempt to explain not only our existence, but also the Big Bang and the whole process of evolution, all within this framework.
Okay, so speaking of evolution, your sources suggest that once you have this infinite size-time diagram and the potential for energy, mass, space-time to interact, the emergence of life is almost inevitable.
Right. It becomes a matter of when, not if.
And from there, it's all about survival, reproduction, mutation, those classic drivers of evolution.
The building blocks of life as we know it.
But then you throw in this idea of power as a fourth principle.
Now we're getting into some interesting territory.
What does power even mean in this context?
Well, your sources highlight viruses as an early example.
Viruses, like the things that make us sick.
Yeah, think about it. They're basically tiny packets of genetic material,
Right.
and they hijack the reproductive systems of other organisms to make copies of themselves.
Sneaky little things.
It's a very early form of power, you could say, exploiting the system for your own benefit.
So it's not just about surviving anymore. It's about manipulating the game to stack the odds in your favor.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have the development of immune systems as a countermeasure.
Like an arms race between viruses and the organisms they're trying to infect.
Precisely. Your sources suggest that this power dynamic continues to play out throughout the entire history of life.
So it's not just about microscopic stuff.
Nope. Think about the aggression of certain fish or the complex social hierarchies you see in primate groups.
Like the alpha male in a pack of wolves.
Exactly. It's all about jockeying for position and resources.
So we can thank those tiny invaders for kickstarting the whole immune system arms race, huh? Nature has a strange sense of humor.
It does. But I'm also seeing how this drive for power could have pushed the development of intelligence, especially in primates.
Yeah, as social structures got more complex, you need a bigger brain to navigate all those power dynamics.
That's a key insight. Your sources argue that this selection pressure could have led to the development of human intelligence.
Wow, it makes you wonder about the role of power in our own societies today and how it continues to shape human behavior.
Definitely something to think about, but I think we need to pause here for now. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we have. I want to give our listeners time to digest all this before we jump into the implications for our understanding of God.
That's a big one. We'll pick up that thread in our next segment and explore how this existential theory redefines our understanding of the divine.
Sounds good. Until then, keep thinking about these ideas. Let them simmer.
And we'll see you back here for part 2 of our deep dive. Welcome back. Ready for round 2?
Definitely. We left off talking about how this power dynamic might have even shaped human intelligence.
Right. Some pretty big implications there.
But now things get even more mind-blowing. Your sources suggest this whole existential framework could completely change how we think about God.
Yeah, it's a pretty radical shift.
So are you saying this theory rules out the existence of God completely?
Not necessarily. More like a reinterpretation.
Okay.
See, your sources argue that this traditional idea of a personified God,
Like the one who created the universe and sets down the rules.
right, that image doesn't really fit with this infinite self-governing universe we've been talking about.
Okay, so where does God fit in then?
Well, your research proposes a pretty bold idea.
What's that?
Maybe God isn't a separate being, but rather synonymous with reality itself.
Whoa.
Like that all-encompassing anti-distinction we talked about, that could be God.
So instead of God creating the universe, God is the universe.
Exactly. And you know what? This actually aligns with some pretty old theological ideas.
Really?
Yeah. Think about the concept of God being beyond human comprehension.
Right, like we can't possibly understand the mind of God.
Exactly. And that idea fits with this notion of God as the unified underlying reality that we can never fully grasp.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could work. It takes away the need for a supernatural being acting outside the laws of physics.
Right. It becomes a much more integrated view.
But if God isn't some being giving us commandments, expecting worship, what does that mean for religion?
Now that's where things get really interesting.
In what way?
Your research suggests that maybe rituals, dogmas, they're not divinely ordained laws, more like personal choices or cultural practices. They can still offer meaning, comfort, community.
But it's not about pleasing some higher power.
Right. It's about the human experience, our search for meaning within this vast, incredible reality.
I've always struggled with organized religion and all the dogma.
Huh.
This idea of connecting with something bigger without all the rules is really appealing to me.
That's understandable. And, your sources acknowledge those practices can be deeply meaningful for people. They're not saying they're wrong.
But maybe we can reinterpret them.
Exactly. Shifting the focus away from obedience to a more personal, nuanced understanding of spirituality.
And I think your sources suggest this could have some real-world implications, too.
Oh, absolutely. Like
Yeah?
reducing religious conflict and violence. Yeah, it's about embracing a more universal understanding of God, one that's grounded in logic, free from dogma.
So instead of dividing us based on different beliefs.
It could actually bring us together.
Powerful stuff. It's like
Yeah.
taking that power element we discussed earlier and applying it to belief systems.
Exactly. Because dogmatic beliefs can be incredibly powerful, but they can also be easily manipulated.
Yeah, history is full of examples of that.
So a more rational, dogma-free understanding of God could be a real antidote to those divisive forces.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity underneath all those different beliefs.
And finding common ground in our search for meaning and purpose within this vast, interconnected reality.
Wow, this has given me a lot to think about. It really challenges those deep-seated beliefs about God, religion, even existence itself.
It does. It's a big shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And remember, this is just one interpretation.
Right.
There are countless other ways of understanding these concepts. It's up to each individual to find what resonates with them.
Absolutely. So we've explored this incredible theory of everything, from the bedrock of certainty to the vastness of energy mass space-time, and now this rethinking of God.
It's been quite a journey.
But what does it all mean for the person listening to this deep dive right now? I think that's the most important question.
Absolutely. Let's bring it all home and explore how these mind-bending ideas can actually be applied to your life.
Okay, so we've made it to the final part of our deep dive. You've taken us on quite a journey with your sources, this potential theory of everything.
It's been a wild ride, for sure.
We've explored the nature of reality itself, rethought the idea of God.
Some really big concepts.
But now I think it's time to bring it all home.
Yeah, what does it all mean for you, the one who brought us these sources?
We've covered so much ground. This infinite size-time diagram, energy mass space-time, this idea of distinction versus the ultimate oneness of reality. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is. But you know what I find so compelling about your sources?
What's that?
They don't just present information. They challenge you to actually apply these concepts to your own life.
Right. It's not just about understanding the theory. It's about what it means for you personally.
Exactly. Like you've been given this new lens to view the world through.
And that can be pretty powerful.
Absolutely. It might make you question assumptions you've held for years.
Or see connections you never noticed before.
It's all about expanding your perspective.
I've always been drawn to science and logic. So this idea that even the most fundamental questions about existence could have a rational explanation really appeals to me.
Makes sense. But I can also see how these ideas could be unsettling for someone who finds comfort in more traditional beliefs.
Yeah, it definitely challenges some deep-seated assumptions.
But that's the beauty of it. Your sources aren't saying one way of thinking is right or wrong.
Right.
They're presenting a framework, a way of understanding the universe grounded in logic and scientific principles.
But ultimately, it's up to you to decide what resonates with your own experiences, your own sense of truth.
It's like your sources are inviting you on a personal quest for meaning.
I like that, a quest for meaning.
They're giving you the tools, the map, but you get to chart your own course through this vast and complex reality.
And that journey is ongoing.
Oh, absolutely. There's always more to learn, more to explore, more to discover.
About ourselves and the universe we inhabit.
Your sources are just the starting point.
So maybe after this deep dive, you'll find yourself looking at everyday things differently.
Like what?
That leaf falling from a tree, the incredible potential energy it contains. Or maybe you'll gaze up at the night sky and ponder our place within this infinite expanse of time and space.
Whatever your takeaway, we hope this deep dive has sparked a sense of wonder and curiosity within you.
A desire to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep searching for answers.
Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Embracing the unknown, challenging our assumptions, finding meaning in the interconnectedness of it all.
Now, here's a final thought to leave you with. Your sources argue that this existential theory rooted in logic and scientific principles could be understood by any intelligent civilization in the cosmos.
Intriguing.
But what if there are other ways of knowing? other paths to understanding the universe that we as humans haven't even conceived of.
It makes you wonder what else is out there.
What if the very nature of reality is so vast and complex that it defies any single explanation? That's something to ponder as you continue your own exploration. Until next time, keep diving deep.